All right, peace, brothers and sisters. Thank you all for tuning in. This is your brother Willie Muhammad, and we're awaiting our guest to come on. And once he gets on, we're going to get right into it. But as you see, tonight we're going to be dealing with a subject that forever comes up. Any member of the Nation of Islam, any member of the Nation of Islam has heard people talk about this question or pose this question to us, make accusations and different things like this, talking about the Nation of Islam via by order of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or even the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, known as Louis X at that time, played a role in the death of our brother Malcolm X. So today we have our scholar, Brother Demetric Muhammad. And Demetric, by Allah's grace, has, for the first time in the Nation of Islam's history, he has put together a book that has the blessings of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we're going to interview our brother tonight, and he'll be coming on shortly. But before he actually comes on, what we want to do is just want to go make some brief announcements, and then we're going to get right to it. So if you're here, thank you, Brother Demetric. We're going to be starting shortly. Looking sharp, brother. You're looking sharp, man. So for those who are on social media, make sure you follow us at Mosque46AV on YouTube and Mosque_46 on Instagram. Please take some time to follow us and subscribe to us, so that you can stay abreast of what we're doing here in the city of New Orleans, what we're striving to do in the city of New Orleans. And also, if you have the opportunity, when you're on our page, once you subscribe, you're going to see that we're in the process of creating another playlist. And this interview is going to be a part of this playlist. This playlist is dealing with about Malcolm X. And we're asking people that, of course, when you're engaged on social media, give your feedback, give your insight, share what you have heard, but make sure you post these video clips of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who was there during that time, where he's talking about what happened during that time, as we're going to hear from our brother tonight, Brother Demetric Muhammad. But this is one of the playlists. Anytime you hear anybody talking about we had something to do with Malcolm X, you need to post some of these clips from these playlists. And when you go through this playlist, you'll be able to see how valuable the clips are. Also, we have this one right here has 43 videos. This is dealing with defending and refuting the false lies of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan being an anti-Semite. And there's a few videos on that as where he's addressing the homosexual and lesbian community, explaining our true stance, and also the Islamic law. So make sure you subscribe and you share these things, because people have, you'll be amazed the amount of people who have not heard the minister for themselves on these issues. If you're in need of prayer, anybody that you know are in need of prayer during this COVID or anything else, please submit their names. Email me, inbox me. You see us here at Muhammad Mosque number 46, so we can lift them up in our prayer group. And also here, we're in the process of raising money to pay off our mosque mortgage. We're looking for 163 people to donate $1,000. And if it's not, if you, whatever you have, we're going to post the link on social media. But when we post the link, we would ask that if you can share it with people who you know will be willing to support and help us in this endeavor. We want to pay off this mortgage, okay? And you see the flyers, and you, whatever it is you can donate. If you can go there right now and donate something on Cash App, we would appreciate it. And we're going to have something special that we're going to do for all of those who took time out to give us anything. If it's $1, you know, whatever you have to give, we will appreciate it. And we thank you in advance. You can also give via PayPal on our website. Next Sunday, you've been following a very dynamic. I have a testimony on last Sunday with our brother Rizza Islam. So on this coming Sunday, inshallah, Allah willing, we'll be interviewing the one and only brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad, the scholar, right? The student minister. And then make sure you pay attention to that interview, because we have another at the end. We're going to announce who our following inshallah guest interview, the person we're going to interview as well. So make sure you tune in so you can hear. We want to get more and more people to listen to these testimonies because they will help to give us a better understanding of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And also, you can go and watch, brother, go and watch the testimonies on our YouTube page and also on my Facebook page. And after you watch them, all we ask, brothers and sisters, if you can leave a few comments articulating or explaining what stood out to you from that particular interview, okay? So we thank you. So now, once our brother gets back, we're going to get into this. Brother Demetric, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me close this, stop sharing this screen, and we're going to get to it. So we have our brother on here, and for those who know, if you don't have the book, Brother Demetric, can you start off telling them where they can actually get the book from?
Yes, sir. I'd be very happy to, Brother Minister Woolley. Right now, the only place that the new book entitled "But Didn't You Kill Malcolm" may be ordered is from our website, www.researchminister.com. Feel free to order it. We have just initiated a new print run. So we have books available now, and we have a much larger printing that is being processed also because we are set upon the widespread distribution of this very important work, not important because I'm the author of it, but it is important because it is for the first time in 55 years since the assassination of Malcolm X, has there been an authorized and approved of defense and response to the controversy of Malcolm's assassination from the Nation of Islam. And this is a book that has been approved of by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the minister actually financed the initial printing of this book. And so we are very excited and very happy to have conversations and to take advantage of any and all platforms from which to share our research and our response to this controversy that has been so widespread, especially among Black youth, that we are anxious to funeralize the myths and the controversies surrounding what we believe is a well-orchestrated and well-financed propaganda campaign that has as its signature feature the character assassination of the leadership of the Nation of Islam, beginning with the character assassination of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and continuing with a wicked character assassination of his student and servant, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So we invite everyone to go to researchminister.com and order your copy right now.
Yes, sir. So, you know, I know you, Brother Demetric, and others who are familiar in the Nation of Islam, we're familiar with you, but can you give those who this may be their first time actually hearing you some brief background about yourself and your expertise?
Well, I can talk about a lot of things, Minister Willie. I don't really enjoy talking about myself, but I am Brother Demetric Muhammad. I'm a student minister serving in the Nation of Islam. I also serve as a member of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's research team. We have published now maybe, I think, 13 books, and we write regularly as a guest columnist in the Final Call newspaper. We have worked many years in the Nation of Islam's prison reform ministry and various other ministries. And we have traveled extensively throughout America, visiting mosques, churches, community centers, colleges and schools as a representative and student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we look forward to continuing that work. And so that's just a little bit about myself and my work up to this point.
Yes, sir. So you briefly talked about why you got into this process of doing this. And some people may ask the question, well, what took the Nation of Islam so long to write a book? But Can you share with the audience how you actually found information in the Muhammad Speaks that there was actually an intent to write a book about this shortly after this incident?
Yes, when we were going through the extensive body of work that comprises the lifespan of the Muhammad Speaks newspapers, beginning officially as Muhammad Speaks in October of 1961, all the way through 1975. We found that maybe in December of 1970, I believe it was, that the Muhammad Speaks newspaper announced to its readership a plan that a little book or pamphlet would be coming forth. It would be published explaining the suspension and the subsequent departure of Minister Malcolm X, or Minister Malcolm Shabazz, from the Nation of Islam. And we searched and we looked and we could not find any evidence that those plans ever materialized. And so, because of our love for the Nation of Islam and our love for the minister, and because of our love for our people, and seeing the condition of Black youth, understanding that they were in the paradoxical situation of loving a man who had transformed his life using the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to become a renowned man, a worldwide recognized man, a strong man, a righteous man. But our youth were in a position of loving Brother Malcolm, but hating the very thing that gave Malcolm to them as a man worthy of admiration and respect, and that be the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. So the paradoxical situation of Black youth might be summed up as someone who likes apples but don't like the apple tree that produced the apple. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so we were motivated to clarify the issues surrounding Brother Malcolm's assassination, hoping that our young people would understand that that which they love and admire in Brother Malcolm, the process that produced Malcolm, has not been lost. That process continues, and it can transform their lives. It can help any young brother or young sister make a radical departure from a life of crime, violence, the disrespect of self and others, a life of immorality and vice. It can help any young brother or sister make a radical departure from that kind of lifestyle and become someone who is worthy of admiration, love, and respect, and who speaks truth to power. And so this is a part of the motivation that went into our reading that in the Muhammad Speaks, and then deciding, or ultimately concluding after a lot of encouragement from a lot of different people, that we should publish a book on the subject.
So in your preparation for this book, because I know you're very thorough in your research, I know you've read many different books, different writings, watched different videos from people who consider to be scholars on the history of Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. But from your research, from your standpoint, what areas do you see in those bodies of work, whether those bodies of work fall short in covering this history?
Well, you have a variety of errors that I have identified in those who write on this subject. Some authors, because of the Freedom of Information Act, believe that they should rely solely on the heavily redacted and specious files from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI. And, you know, it's kind of like trying to learn about the life of Jesus and his 12 disciples in documents authored by the staff of the Emperor of Rome or the Jewish Sanhedrin leaders. Certainly, you're not going to get an objective view of Jesus and the disciples from the internal or private documents of their nefarious adversaries. So that's one major error that we see. Researchers place too much of an importance and have too much of a dependence upon FBI documentation. There are important facts that can be gleaned from FBI records and documents, but to even begin to comb through the FBI documents requires a certain skill set and training, because essentially it's like trying to wade through a sewer system to find nuggets of gold and diamonds and precious metals. Secondly, we have the era of those who want to dismiss any testimony coming from those who have a belief and a faith in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam and the teachings, such that the believer's view and perspective is hardly ever a part of the narrative in those mainstream publications that we have seen over the years. And it suggests that the perspective of those who love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is not equal to the perspective of those who love Brother Malcolm X. And one of the points that we emphasize is that we prove and we show how love, respect, and admiration for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad does not preclude love, respect, and admiration for Malcolm X, and vice versa. You can love Brother Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You can love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Brother Malcolm. The facts and the truth of the situation permits us to have love and respect for both men. And so we find that the perspective of the believer has been omitted. And finally, I think that we see a anti-Nation of Islam bias in most of the mainstream publications about the assassination of Malcolm X. People who have already made up their minds before they even begin to do the research that they want to lay the blame of Brother Malcolm's assassination solely and squarely on the Nation of Islam. And one final thing I will add is that most who have written about this subject have ignored whole areas of research, particularly the area of research that examines Malcolm as well as the Nation of Islam being labeled as anti-Semites by groups like the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, the Zionist Organization of America, Southern Poverty Law Center, Simon Wiesenthal Center, etc. In our book, we document how consideration of that dubious designation is vitally important in understanding and exposing many of the hidden hands that were party to Brother Malcolm's untimely demise.
It's interesting. And it appears that, every year there's something new, some new angle. And last year, now what they have done, using a actual historical figure by the name of Bumpy Johnson, who the movie Hoodlum was made after. Now there's a TV series where it stars Forrest Whitaker as Bumpy Johnson. And in it, there's in the movie, they're talking about the relationship between Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X. But in your book, and for those who don't have it, in chapter 2 in your book, you talk about the Godfather of Harlem. So can you explain how they use creative license to exaggerate the relationship between Malcolm X and Bumpy Johnson, and how they distort the historical legacies of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Congressman Adam Clayton Powell?
Well, the creative narrative that we see on display in the Epix TV series Godfather of Harlem has to be compared and contrasted against the facts of history. Now, Bumpy Johnson's widow penned a biography about the life of Bumpy Johnson. And in her account, she discusses the fact that Bumpy Johnson was someone who didn't really have a relationship with Brother Malcolm, in as much as he admired Brother Malcolm as a stand-up brother, someone who would speak truth to power and challenge the forces of oppression. Most of Malcolm's public career included the period of time where Bumpy Johnson was actually incarcerated. So all of these scenes of Malcolm and Bumpy together in the Epics program, is completely fiction. And of course, the creators of that show will say, well, as Spike Lee said of his movie Malcolm X, we're not creating a documentary. We are creating a TV drama for the purposes of entertainment that is based on actual historical characters. So they cover themselves by, hiding under creative license. But you and I both know, Minister Willie, we live in a world where the masses of the people, don't read books, don't investigate facts, don't do historical analysis and evidence, but know what they know about history at all because of the movies that they have watched or the television shows that they have watched. And so it becomes very dangerous when very significant and important historical figures in the struggle of Black liberation become molded and reshaped and modified in the eyes of the modern or current generation who never lived and shared time and space with these historical figures and who know what they know about them only from television and from movies. And so you see now Brother Malcolm, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as Adam Clayton Powell, really be given dangerous historical makeovers in the name of entertainment. And so we have written about this phenomenon, and we look at it in a way that many of the writers who ultimately were involved in putting the Bible together, they talk about the prophets of God in ways that associate sins and shortcomings to their history, demagnetizing the prophets of God from those who would be drawn to them in their prophetic message, such that by the time Allah revealed the Holy Quran to Prophet Muhammad, the Quran had to clarify that none of God's prophets were guilty of the sins that had been ascribed to them by those who compiled the Bible. Likewise, it is Black leadership today. If you'll notice, Minister Willie, you're an educator, you know that the popular biographies about men such as Dr. King, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, now include content that robs these great heroes and heroines of our struggle of the kind of magnetism that would draw young people to them in the way that they should be drawn to them, such that they see the struggle that they participated in. And now I, as a young brother or young sister, I see myself as taking the baton from the great leaders of the past and carrying their work into the future. So they gave us Dr. King and they told us, well, Dr. King was great, but y'all didn't know that man was cheating on his wife. They gave us Booker T. Washington. They said, but yeah, Booker T, he built Tuskegee, but he was really an Uncle Tom. They give us Malcolm, and now they say, well, yeah, I know you say Malcolm was our Black manhood, but guess what? Malcolm was secretly gay. And so this Godfather of Harlem is a part of what I have termed as the corruption of Black history by the performing posthumous character assassinations on the great heroes and heroines of our past. And I think as a community, we have to stand against it.
Yes, sir. And all of this, brothers and sisters, once again, we're interviewing Brother Demetirc Muhammad. He's the author. This is one of his most recent pieces of work, which is titled, But Didn't You Kill Malcolm X? So in your book, Brother Demetirc, you talk about myth busting, right? And yes, you sir. Deal with one of which I believe is one of the most often repeated lies, which is the Most Elijah Muhammad having illicit relationships with teenage secretaries. Can you briefly talk about that?
Yes. This is one of the most egregious slanders against the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad by many who have learned about the assassination of Malcolm X through mainstream sources that are owned and controlled by the enemies of Black people who targeted any and all Black leaders for character assassination. Remember that we learned through the church committee reports, only in the early 1970s, about what has become a ubiquitous term in conscious communities and among so-called woke brothers and sisters, and that is the term Cointelpro, an acronym meaning the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. And part of Cointelpro's objectives was to discredit those leaders of so-called Black nationalist hate type organizations, those leaders that J. Edgar Hoover wrote in his internal memos actually fit the description of a Messiah among Black people who would unify us and lead us toward liberation. Both Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were looked upon by J. Edgar Hoover as potential messiahs that could lead Black people, like Moses and Aaron led the children of Israel in Exodus in the Bible, toward liberation and independence. And so this controversy we discuss, and we, really deconstruct the arguments that, number one, Malcolm left the nation because he believed that his teacher was an immoral man. Number two, we deconstruct and bust up the myth regarding the ages of the sisters who became wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And number three, we show that Malcolm knew and understood that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like Prophet Muhammad, like Moses, like Abraham, and all of the prophets and messengers of God, at a certain point obeyed the command of God to take on wives, to produce children. Malcolm understood this. In fact, we include in our narrative how Malcolm characterized the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's relationship properly when he was in eviction court in New York City in June of 1964. He referred to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad having taken on wives. He also discussed the domestic life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad privately with him at his home in Phoenix. He also discussed this with Minister Louis X at the time, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was fulfilling the prophecies of the Bible and the Quran, that the prophets and the messengers of God were commanded by God and that God had made lawful to them wives. And so we go into the details of this controversy in the book and show that for anyone to suggest that the personal morality of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the reason why Malcolm left the nation, that's false. Malcolm understood that, number one, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the messenger of God was not the messenger of God outside of the history of the messengers of God, but that he was the latest of the messengers of God in the same class of men as the prophets of old. Malcolm understood this and he taught this. And if you don't believe that, just consider how in recent years, Malcolm has become something of a poster child for the Black Sunni community who celebrate Brother Malcolm as an example of the transformative power of the life of Prophet Muhammad on the Black man and woman of America. Well, if we believe that Malcolm left being a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to become a follower of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then now we have to look at this subject in an entirely different light, because most of the biographies of Prophet Muhammad include that Prophet Muhammad had, some say 9 wives, some say 11 wives. Some of the biographers have even said that Prophet Muhammad had a teenage wife, his wife Aisha. Some of the slanderous Orientalist writers tried to say that Aisha was not even a teenager, but a preteen. We don't believe that, but we believe that, as many of the reputable scholars have said, that Aisha was older than a preteen. And yet Malcolm, we are told, went to become a follower of Prophet Muhammad and so-called true Orthodox Islam. Well, this is a problem for those who say he left the nation because of the domestic life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And as he said, having children by teenage secretaries. So we discussed this in detail for any of those who are interested in the facts of the truth. Unfortunately, there are so many people who want to believe the slander. But for those who really want to know the truth, your eyes will be opened by reading the facts that we have presented, and you will understand today what Malcolm understood yesterday.
And one of the things that's also so beautiful about your book, and you started off talking about this, that one doesn't have to uplift the legacy of Malcolm X. They don't have to tear down the legacy of the Most High Elijah Muhammad to uplift Malcolm X. And we don't have to tear down Malcolm X to uplift the legacy of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. So some people would think that this book, and brothers and sisters, we're interviewing Brother Demetirc X. This is the author of this book. We'll be posting in the comment section where you can get all of your copies of this book, but make sure you get it, because this comes from us and it contains an aspect and a view of this history and this controversy that oftentimes, as brother said in his earlier questions, that are not mentioned. So you're actually in this book, but you actually defend Malcolm as it relates to, Manny Marble in his book, that it kind of tried to say that Malcolm was engaged in a homosexual lifestyle, but it doesn't even provide any evidence of that. Can you talk about what your book shares about that and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's words?
Yes, we were blessed, Brother Willie, to spend an entire day with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan after he read the manuscript. And he told me that he loved it. And we went through areas of the book, areas of the manuscript, and he identified language that he wanted me to refine and to improve. And he also gave me verbiage that we included verbatim in the book, where Minister Farrakhan defended Brother Malcolm and told me, I want Malcolm defended on this issue, because he said that Brother Malcolm made men of us. And whatever Malcolm or whatever any believer in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did before they came to Islam, after they come to Islam, it is as though it never happened. It is completely thrown away and they are completely forgiven. So for historians to seek to attach a label on Brother Malcolm, that is a specious label to begin with, because Malcolm never admitted to being a homosexual. He never admitted to being bisexual. He never said that he had any type of relationships like that. Bruce Perry, who wrote a book about Brother Malcolm some years ago, was the first author to begin to lay a label on Brother Malcolm as being a homosexual. And we also found some of the writings of Bruce Perry where he talked about Malcolm being ambivalent to the Jews and being an anti-Semite. And so in the mind of Bruce Perry, at least, we can see that he is one that had a view of Brother Malcolm, that Malcolm was ambivalent to the Jews. And it gave me cause to ask the question. And we asked this question in the book: was the posthumous designation of Brother Malcolm as a homosexual punishment for his very strident rebuke of Jewish economic exploitation of Black people, particularly in Harlem, New York? You'll see in our book statements made by Brother Malcolm that caused groups like the Anti-Defamation League and others and many Jewish periodicals around the country to label Brother Malcolm an anti-Semite. So for a man to be the first one to write about Malcolm as being a closeted homosexual, to also be someone to claim that he was ambivalent to the Jews, it raises a lot of questions. But Minister Farrakhan wanted the world to know that Malcolm was never a homosexual. He was never someone that was a bisexual, and that his work and his legacy is that he made strong men out of those who became students and followers of his who followed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And if Brother Malcolm had any of those kinds of experiences prior to his coming into Islam, the viewpoint of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is that whatever we have done before we come into the knowledge of self and a life of faith and belief, it is thrown into the sea of forgetfulness, and all is forgiven.
Thank you. And can you also in your book, you know, there's this another lie that goes around saying about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan publicly in a written article in the Muhammad Speaks of that time, called for the death of Malcolm X. Can you talk about how you address that in your book?
Yes. As you know, Minister Willie, as time has gone on, the propaganda campaign against the Nation of Islam has morphed. Early on, it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad who was blamed for killing Malcolm X. Well, when you get to the year 1994, 1994 represents a period of time where the rebuilt Nation of Islam under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was reaching a place where it had made the Nation of Islam once again a ubiquitous presence in Black America, much to the chagrin of the nefarious adversaries of the Black community who have always targeted the nation, not because we're a group of haters or anti-Semites or hate white people or hate America. Quite the contrary. They've always targeted the nation because we interfere with their plans of genocide for our people. And so they target us like an enemy targets the security of his enemy. When you're in war, one of the first things that the adversary does is he targets the military, the soldiers, because he wants to leave ultimately the nation that he wants to conquer without any protection as an open prey. So the nation's always been targeted because of our beneficial impact among our people. And it was in 1994 that for the first time, you heard any kind of language in the mainstream that Farrakhan was involved in the assassination of Malcolm X. Think about it, that's nearly 30 years after Malcolm's assassination. 30 years where an admitted killer had been arrested and two other brothers who were falsely arrested, all of them had been serving time in prison. They served nearly 30 years in prison. And yet during those 30 years, no one ever said anything about Louis Farrakhan being involved because it was a ludicrous proposition then. It's a ludicrous proposition today. It's ludicrous because Minister Farrakhan was only one. He wasn't even at the scene. He had no involvement at all in it. And he was one of many ministers who, out of love for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, used their pens and used the written word to defend the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on the pages of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And so to derail and to stop the momentum of the rebuilding of the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, this mythology was created primarily by the New York Post, Jack Neufeld, and Gabe Pressman. They were the architects of the Farrakhan killed Malcolm phenomenon. And vestiges of that mythology extend up until today, so much so that just a week or so ago, when prominent celebrities were helping to promote Minister Farrakhan's July 4th message, you could see people in the comment section saying, well, I don't like Farrakhan because he killed Malcolm X. First of all, whether you like Farrakhan or not, one glaring fact should give you pause for even thinking that. And that is, there is no statute of limitations on murder. Now, Minister Farrakhan is a man that those who control social media, they hate his message so much, they have worked hard to remove his presence from social media. Don't you think that since there is no statute of limitations on murder, if Farrakhan had been involved in the murder of Malcolm X, these same entities would have Minister Farrakhan arrested, arrested on the charge of orchestrating Malcolm's assassination from 30 years ago. So it's foolish to say or to suggest that the authority, because when you say the minister killed Malcolm X, and yet the minister's free, he's never served any time, then you're basically saying the authorities who hate him, who have worked hard to destroy his ministry, have allowed him to go unpunished for 55 years. That's not an intelligent statement to make in light of the facts.
That's something, man. And this is, as I said, brothers and sisters, what brother is talking about, he goes into even more detail in this book. He mentioned in his response about the brother who was arrested and how he said he wanted to name the names of those who participated in the murder of Malcolm X. So brother Demetirc talks about this. Also in your book, brother Demetirc, you specifically, there's a section where you specifically address how the inner circle of Malcolm X exonerated the Nation of Islam of the charge of killing Malcolm X. Can you talk about that and how you discuss that in your research?
Yes, sir. That's a great question, Minister Willie, because when you're dealing with historical research, the gold standard in historical research is what we call primary sources. You always want to cite your sources, but the best sources that you can cite are those sources that are closest in terms of time and proximity to the subject that is the center of your research. So much was made about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his relationship with his secretaries, at least in terms of the propaganda campaign against the Nation of Islam. Well, it should be interesting for those of us who have heard of that propaganda to know that Malcolm's secretary, particularly Miss Sarah Mitchell, has for many years been on the opposite side of the nation killed Malcolm mythology. She is the person who had the last conversation with Brother Malcolm before he went on the stage that day. And I interviewed her personally before she passed away a few years ago. And wow. She maintained that the nation didn't kill Malcolm. And she told me, and she also published in her monograph entitled Shepherd of the Black Sheep, which she wrote about her years working for Brother Malcolm. Now, she was not a registered Muslim. She was one of those young professional brothers and sisters who came to help Brother Malcolm once he left the Nation of Islam. And Ms. Mitchell wrote, and we include a very powerful quote from her on the back cover of our book, where she talked about what Brother Malcolm had intended to say the day that he was assassinated. And that included that he was going to retract his charge that the Nation of Islam was out to kill him. And this fits with what he also told Alex Haley when he put in the autobiography, the things that are happening to me now, this can't be the Muslims. He said, in one instance, I know the Muslim tactics because I invented most of them. They don't kill women and children. They don't have operatives in Europe. They don't have operatives in France who could keep me from entering France to speak. They don't have anyone in Egypt who could poison my food and where I almost died in a restaurant in Egypt. So Malcolm was transitioning from an understanding of those who were out to kill him. And yet he was assassinated just before he could make that public pronouncement. Now, Ms. Mitchell is just one of those who pushed back against the notion that it was the nation that killed Brother Malcolm. You also have members of his inner circle that include James 67X, all who became Abdul Razak. Abdul Razak says that he believed that Brother Malcolm was on his way back to the nation. You have Benjamin Kareem, who is Malcolm's assistant minister. You have Charles Kenyatta. You have others that we have listed in the book. Malcolm's elder sister and his patron, Ella Collins, also said that Malcolm told her you let the world know if something happens to me, it was the CIA that did it.
Mm.
So you have all of these people who are primary sources, who were close to Malcolm, who were close to the assassination, saying that no, this wasn't the nation's doing. This was, quote, bigger than the nation. And so you come to find that it is secondary, tertiary, and even more subsequent sources than that have participated in the propaganda campaign of it was the nation that killed Malcolm. Now, I don't claim that the Nation of Islam was not angry with Brother Malcolm, but you have to understand something that is really a practical reality. Malcolm remained both a Muslim and a Black nationalist after he left the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's no indication that he was going to abandon Islam. There's no indication that he was going to abandon Black nationalism as a goal. In fact, he said at Reverend Albert Cleage's church at the famous Ballad or the Bullet speech, this is after he left the nation. He said, I credit the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with everything that I am and everything that he taught me. He said, I'm still a Muslim. He said, but that's just my private religion. He said, but my politics is Black nationalism. My economics is Black nationalism. Said that, you know, so I say that to say this, even though Malcolm departed from the nation, he remained closer in terms of religion and political views with the Nation of Islam than he did with the enemies of him, both him and the Nation of Islam. So ultimately, had time gone on, Malcolm would have either A, come back to the nation or become a veritable ally of the nation. Fact about it, we quote Jewish publications who literally, Minister Willie, and you'll appreciate this as an educator, Jewish publications took a different view of Malcolm leaving the nation. See, you have to remember, in 1963, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made a bold announcement. That bold announcement was that for the first time, the Nation of Islam was going to get involved in the electoral politics process. And it shocked a lot of people because they were always comfortable with the Muslims not voting, not being involved in politics. Fact about it, Malcolm actually delivered the message at Savior's Day that year because of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's health. But the Muhammad Speaks carried coverage of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad delivering a message that Black people should elect their own candidates and that the Muslims were going to begin to vote. So you will read in some Jewish publications that we quoted that they saw Malcolm leaving the nation as Malcolm leaving the nation to form the political wing of the Nation of Islam. So in their minds, it wasn't a split in terms of a separation, but it was a split in terms of growth. Like when cells divide in the body or in biology, through the process of mitosis, cells divide so that the organism can grow and become stronger. So many of the wise looked at that situation and understood this did not mean Malcolm was going to become an enemy and an adversary of Elijah Muhammad, but it meant that Malcolm was going to begin to organize politically and develop a political mass movement to complement and to support Elijah Muhammad's spiritual mass movement. So there's a lot for those, if you're willing to study, to see that this situation of Brother Malcolm's leaving the Nation of Islam is more than what meets the eye, and is certainly so much more than what we in the general public have been led to believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And for those who are watching, we're going to, in a few moments, we're going to start taking questions. So if you have questions, submit them in the comment section of the Facebook Live. We ask that you continue to share. We ask that you tag those people. You know those people that's on social media. They always got something to say about We Kill Malcolm. And here's the opportunity to ask their questions. And we also want to make sure that you all get our brother's book. It's called, what's the website, Brother Demetirc?
Website
Minister,
is researchminister.com.
researchminister.com, where you can get that book and also others. And also, brothers and sisters, if you have connections where you know people on college campuses and professors and people who have these other podcasts and media outlets, and they deal with Black issues and they consider themselves to be lovers of Malcolm, we have our brother, we have scholarship. You know, our brother has written a book about that, you know, about this. So here's the opportunity. Talk to those people, see if they can get our brother on the show. And it's interesting that when we come with our research, it gets very, very quiet, brother. It gets very, very quiet. So until other people begin to start submitting some questions, I'll ask the remainder of mine. So if you have questions, brothers and sisters, type your question in so I can ask our brother. So in the book, and this really stuck out to me, was the emphasis that you gave about on the dirty tricks of the U.S. government to divide, discredit, and destroy Black organizations. So this is a two-part question. One, can you explain to people what the Cointelpro, I ain't gonna say was, but is, because I still believe they exist. And two, why did you give such an emphasis on their dirty tricks in your book?
Well, the counterintelligence program of the FBI called Cointelpro was a term that we first learned about as a result of the US Congress investigating the abuse of powers by the intelligence community of the executive wing of the US government, the FBI, the CIA, etc. So the Church Committee, Senator Frank Church, the Church Committee was named for him, and he was the one that initiated these hearings. And it was in the early 1970s that the general public learned of what even Cointelpro was. And for the first time, shocking revelations of what was actually being done to neutralize any group that dissented against the policies and the programs of the federal government. And this included student activist groups. This included those groups who were against the war in Vietnam. This included women's rights groups, and the lion's share of their undercover and illicit activities targeted Black groups, those groups that were organizing Black people to fight for our rights, to fight for equality of opportunity, to fight for justice in the court system, to campaign against police brutality and mob attacks, to fight against lynching of our people. These sincere men and women did not know or have a full appreciation for just how high up in the American government opposition against their sincere work took place. And so I place emphasis on it in the book because, as you said, those kinds of attitudes against Black liberation exist today. Fact about it, it was just a few years ago, maybe around 2007, when the Final Call had a story about Homeland Security. It was revealed that Homeland Security was spying on the Nation of Islam back in 2007. Just a few months ago, it was revealed that the FBI was spying on Minister Farrakhan in the lead up to the 2015 Justice or Else March in Washington, D.C. So you're right, it's not speculation, it's documented. Many who have been keeping up with what's going on with Black Lives Matter know that the FBI has begun to label Black Lives Matter, the Nation of Islam, the New Black Panther Party, etc., as what they call Black identity extremists. So COINTELPRO proper may have died with J. Edgar Hoover, but the attitude that the movement for justice, the movement for equality, the movement for liberation among Black people must be spied upon and controlled and ultimately neutralized. That mind continues in those who rule over the American government. And so I wanted those of us who are activists, those of us who are members of Black groups and organizations, to have an appreciation for and an understanding of some of the kinds of tricks, some of the kinds of plots that have been historically carried out against us. Because a lot of times, like you, Minister Willie, we sit back and we see what takes place in social media. And I see some of us playing right into the hand of certain well-known Cointelpro strategies. They were always interested in keeping groups with similar ideas and similar aims and objectives at odds or at variance with one another. If you begin to read some of the writings about what J. Edgar Hoover did in the case of the Black Panther Party and Ron Karenga's group, US, they literally wrote letters between these two groups, encouraging them to kill each other. So they would send a letter to us, the US organization, signed by maybe Al Prentice Bunchy Carter or Bobby Seale or Eldridge Cleaver, saying that we're gonna kill you. And this was designed to cause the brothers in the US organization to try to kill them first. Because if you're gonna kill me, then I'm gonna kill you before you kill me, that kind of thing. So here was our government encouraging groups to become rivals when these were groups who had shared goals and objectives. They were both trying to fight for Black people, and yet our government was trying to get them to fight one another. Of all of the groups that they infiltrated, that they worked to sabotage, they spent the lion's share of their resources trying to destroy the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. In truth, one of the important points we make throughout our book is that Brother Malcolm was targeted because he was the strongest and the greatest helper to the man who was the #1 enemy of J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. That was Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. They had been working to sabotage the Nation of Islam since our inception in the 1930s. Malcolm didn't come into the nation until the late 40s and early 50s. So when they saw Elijah having that kind of strong and capable help, Malcolm became a target, not because of his independent ability as a leader, but because he was like a great general of a great leader of a head of state. I referenced the recent assassination of the Iranian general by President Trump. President Trump is angry with the administration and the government of Iran, but instead of a direct attack against the leadership of the Iranian government, he took out their best general. I believe his name was, is it Soleimani? Yeah, I don't remember his name.
They just put an arrest warrant out for Trump for that.
They did. And so that is why the government targeted Malcolm. He was like one who would be considered a great general for Elijah Muhammad. But Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam were the real target. Malcolm then became collateral damage in a war between the US government and the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir. Well, one of us, we have one question, a Sister Taiwan Muhammad, she asks, how long did you consider taking on this weighty and potentially volatile subject?
I don't really know. It was not something that I was eager to do necessarily, because it is a volatile subject, and it is a subject that you had to wade through the sewer of propaganda to deal with that which has been hidden and that which has been, in other cases, deliberately obfuscated. And so I didn't want to do it. but we began doing this as a lecture, and we did it in, I believe, 9 or 10 cities. And everywhere we delivered it, people said, you should put this research in a book. And I didn't want to. And so ultimately, we concluded that it needed to be put into a book. And we didn't know that anyone else was going to put it into a book. And we found out that the Nation of Islam wanted to have a book on the subject going all the way back to 1970. So, you know, we decided, well, maybe Allah, God, is placing this on my shoulders to do. And if he has placed it on my shoulders to do, even though I don't want to do it, I believe he will bless me and guide me to make it a reality. And I'm here now to bear witness that he did just that. And I have been personally amazed at what we were blessed to uncover, that I have to give all praise is due to Allah, because it was beyond what we even anticipated, being able to uncover and excavate that powerfully defends the Nation of Islam.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Brother Richard asked the question, did anyone from the Shabazz family reach out to you about your book, or do they even know about your book?
I have not been reached out to about our book by the Shabazz family. I don't know if they know about it. The book has just been published in February. So it has, pardon me, it is gradually making its way into the mainstream. And we pray that as it makes its way into the mainstream, that we can have the opportunity to make it widely known. As you stated, this is not a book that seeks to add insult or injury to the Shabazz family. I believe that I can speak as a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And as a student of Minister Farrakhan, and one who is striving to become a representative of his, I have tried to represent what I have learned is the minister's view and the minister's sentiment toward Brother Malcolm. And that is that he loves Brother Malcolm, and that he remains disappointed in how Brother Malcolm's life ended. So we try to represent the view and the sentiment of the minister. You will know, Brother Willie, that at the close of the book, we include transcripts of 2 speeches delivered by Minister Farrakhan about the assassination of Malcolm X. One of those speeches was delivered at the Apollo Theater, where the minister had a reconciliation meeting with the widow of Malcolm X, Dr. Betty Shabazz. The other transcript that we included were his sincere, candid, thoughtful reflections the day after that speech, when he spoke at Mosque number 7, Harlem, New York, about the assassination of Malcolm X.
Yes, sir.
And that particular speech, for me, should be studied by any of us from the Nation of Islam who want to speak on this subject, because you get a chance to understand and have a window into the heart, mind, and soul, and the true sentiments of Minister Farrakhan about Malcolm X. And you don't walk away with a feeling of hatred for Brother Malcolm. You don't walk away feeling that you have to castigate Brother Malcolm, but that you can, as Minister Farrakhan does, lament the ending of the life of our brother, but simultaneously celebrate and respect all of the great work that he did for his teacher and leader, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
And that's a good point to lead into this next question. And if anybody has questions, this is your opportunity to type them in. We have a few more minutes to type them in. But in that lecture, and we've talked about it before, and you kind of touched on it, how this book is not meant to lambast or destroy Brother Malcolm. you use a term, and you said that you were inspired by using this term by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, when you talk about how Malcolm's turn against his teacher was manufactured, right? That's what
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, the word. Can you elaborate on just how what does that mean? It was manufactured, and how was his turn against his teacher done so?
Well, I think you're referencing the term we use, Minister Willie, manufactured hypocrisy.
Yes.
And so we settled upon that term because certainly at the end of Malcolm's life, we cannot deny that he became a hypocrite to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We cannot deny that. We cannot sugarcoat that. We cannot characterize that in any other kind of way. However, I discuss how in the case of Malcolm X, we have to place an asterisk by his hypocrisy because it was not what I would term an organic hypocrisy. It was a manufactured hypocrisy. It was the result of complex forces coming together against Brother Malcolm to turn him against his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Fact about it, we even include the transcript of a recording where the FBI literally visited Malcolm's home during his suspension, seeking to enlist his help against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So what I'm saying is not theoretical or philosophical. You know, it's well documented that they wanted Brother Malcolm in a state of disappointment and in a statement of being under punishment or suspension, however you want to characterize it. They wanted him they wanted to be able to use him against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so Malcolm valiantly rebuffed them. However, as time would go on, again, during the episode in the late 60s of the Black Panther Party and us, we saw documents where they were sending messages back and forth between two different groups of Black brothers and sisters. And the goal was, let's make them fight and kill each other. Let's make them do our dirty work for us. We hate both groups, but we're going to be the hidden hand trying to facilitate them to destroy one another. And this is what happened between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X's group. So Malcolm would receive letters and anonymous mailings and anonymous phone calls that allegedly came from the Muslims, talking about, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And the Nation of Islam received the same thing, allegedly from Malcolm X. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad spoke in New York in the summer of 1964, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, Elijah Muhammad Jr., and the leadership of the Fruit of Islam received phone calls by people claiming to be from Malcolm's camp, saying that if Elijah Muhammad comes to New York, we're gonna kill him. So back and forth was communication being passed that ultimately caused Malcolm to turn against his teacher, because he began to believe that his teacher was out to do him harm. But as I stated earlier, as Malcolm's last days, which of course he didn't know it was his last days, but he was beginning to turn and he was evaluating what exactly is happening to me and where is it coming from. You and the readers may be shocked to learn that Malcolm was aware that the group called B'nai B'rith had been amassing a private file against the Nation of Islam. This private file, this private trove of documents had been gleaned or was the work product of spies that they used to send in to the nation. And in 1959, their files were utilized by major mainstream publications to create a veritable flood of propaganda. Articles published in Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report, Time, and Look magazine came from the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai They were at that time working to destroy the Nation of Islam. And so Malcolm knew this. In Carl Evans's book, he discusses this with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so Malcolm in his final days began to consider who were the players trying to assassinate him. And in Malcolm's analysis, he had concluded, I was wrong. This is not the work of the Nation of Islam. This is what Malcolm said. Now, again, he is the most primary of sources in the case of his own assassination. Yet many people would dismiss his sentiments and follow after, again, subsequent sources who are far removed in terms of time and proximity from Malcolm and his assassination. Yet we document in our book, again, we have over 400 sources. And so we document the points that we make to emphasize that our brother never wanted to turn against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He loved his teacher. He loved the nation. And I personally believe, according to what I have read, what I have researched, and the people that I have talked to, I believe that had Malcolm survived February 21st, 1965, he was going to ultimately return to the Nation of Islam. Just imagine, Minister Willie, had Malcolm stated publicly in that audience, I was wrong. It is not Elijah Muhammad and the Muslims seeking to take my life. Well, that's considered an overture. Well, we don't know if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would have reciprocated with an overture. Abdullah Razak believed that Malcolm was going to return. Others believed that Malcolm was going to return. But since he was being spied on and his conversations were being recorded, I believe that those who really killed Brother Malcolm understood he's going to make that statement today. He's going to remove the charges from Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. We can't allow him to make that statement publicly. Yes, we've got to do the deed today. Yes, and so our brother's life was taken before he could make the statement that his secretary, again, I say his secretary and personal assistant, why I emphasize that language.
He was there.
Because the word secretary literally means one who tarries or works or labors with private or secret information. So the one that Malcolm was confiding in, his private thoughts and thinking, she said he was going to retract his charges, that it was the Muslims trying to kill him. Now, you don't have to believe it, but I believe it because she was there.
Right.
She worked with him. She shared time and space with him and was in close proximity with him. So if you can believe what Malcolm said about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his secretaries, why can't you believe what Malcolm's secretary said about him, that he was about to publicly exonerate the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Muslims?
That's a good point. You have about 3 more questions. One question, get you some water, man. I know we got you talking. So
that's hot tea, brother.
Get some tea. We have about, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, and we're gonna wrap it up. Okay, somebody asked. Well, I'll say this. Brother Richard asked, he said, how do you compare your book to the Netflix doc series they made on this topic on Brother Malcolm? He said after watching it, he personally feels it makes your book a must read. So how do you feel about that? Briefly on that, then we get to the other questions.
You know, my book is not written. The first thing I would say is my book it has nothing to do with that documentary, except that both are about the assassination of Malcolm X. People have asked me about the documentary, and I have watched the documentary, but I didn't know anything about the documentary when we began our work. So I want to make it clear that my book is not a response to the Netflix documentary. I joined the Nation of Islam as a teenager in 1990. And all throughout my tenure as a member in the nation, this controversy has been a part of many people in their thinking as it relates to why they don't like the nation or things they don't understand about the nation. So we began our work long before there was any knowledge of this documentary in the public. I think the documentary, in terms of propaganda, I would say that it aimed at trying to place the blame of Malcolm's assassination again in the domain of the Nation of Islam. But I would say by comparison, it is less of a effective tool of propaganda than I would say is the Godfather of Harlem. The documentary is at least based upon the investigation of the individuals who put the documentary together. Mm-hmm. When you come into the Godfather of Harlem, you have essentially lies being created out of whole cloth. I mean, there's no claim at objectivity. There's no claim that we are presenting the facts as they are. They offer to the viewer a little disclaimer at the beginning of the program, but of course, who really reads that? Who really, even pays that any attention? And so after Godfather of Harlem, people will walk away having a certain attitude about Malcolm, a certain attitude about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a certain attitude about the nation, certain attitude about Adam Clayton Powell. And by and large, their attitudes will be negative, you see. Mm-hmm. So I don't really have a lot to say about the documentary. Okay. I'm more interested in engaging people with our book. And once you read our book, you'll be able to see that documentary, The Godfather of Harlem, anything else on the subject of the assassination of Malcolm X through the lens of facts that are very important to vindicate the nation. So I affectionately refer to our book as the vindication of the nation.
Yes, sir. How do you touched on this earlier, but somebody made a statement in the comment. I just wanted to bring it back up. How would you respond to those who would say, well, Malcolm left the nation because his teacher was not practicing what he preached?
Well, Malcolm never said that. First of all, see, I remember my brother and friend and colleague, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, said something in response to one of his critics once, and it's relevant here. When a person publishes a work and they put their work before the public, now if you want to engage with them, you need to engage with the work that they have produced. Don't get mad at this interview or any speech or any lecture and come at me or anyone, but go to our sources. That's what scholarship revolves around. It is an examination and interrogation of sources. And I have presented my sources. As it relates directly to your question, most people are oblivious to the fact that Malcolm publicly stated his reasons for leaving.
And what were those?
See, so now, again, you're either going to believe what you heard or you're going to believe the facts. I can't, there's nothing I can say if you don't want to believe the facts. We can't even have a conversation, But Malcolm had what they call a Declaration of Independence from the Nation of Islam. And most people don't know that he said that I'm leaving the nation to be able to independently promote the program of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is what Malcolm said when he left. See? He even wrote a letter to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He sent, and he made it public. And he was telling him, he said, you know, dear apostle, I just want you to know, it ain't because of you that I'm leaving, but I'm leaving because of the officials in Chicago. They won't let me help you the way I want to help you or the way I know that you need to be helped. And these are Malcolm's words. You can take it or you can let it alone. But he never said that he left because he no longer believed in the message and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Fact about it, we document a published study from researchers, you know, because much ado has been made, Minister Willie, about Brother Malcolm's Hajj in Mecca. And people are led to believe that, well, you know, his eyes came open. He had an epiphany. He learned that there were white Muslims, and his view on white supremacy and white people helping him change. Whereas a group of researchers who wanted to take that mythology to task, and they examined all of Malcolm's speeches post Nation of Islam. And they concluded that Malcolm's attitudes toward the white man had not changed. And they include quotes, and we include quotes, and we discussed the conclusion that they made. So again, when you look at facts, the myths evaporate. That's why the subtitle of our book, Myth Busting the Propaganda, because the public has been led to believe lies as it relates to this very tragic and critical episode within Black history. But you don't find where Brother Malcolm stated that he was leaving because of the personal domestic life of his teacher. And again, he couldn't do that unless he did it tongue in cheek, or unless he was going to leave religion. Why do I say that? As we already discussed, if he left Nation of Islam to follow Sunni Orthodox Islam because Elijah Muhammad had taken wives, well, he was going to follow Prophet Muhammad, who had also taken wives. Well, let's say Malcolm said, well, I don't like the fact that Prophet Muhammad took wives, so I'm going to leave and I'm going to become a Christian. Well, if he had become a Christian, the Bible would have been his sacred text. All of the prophets of the Bible had more than one wife. If he said, well, I don't like that, I'm going to become a Jew. Well, the Torah has the same prophets of Christianity. All of their prophets had more than one wife. And so for Malcolm to have had a fundamental problem with a prophet or messenger of God having more than one wife, he would have had to give up the Abrahamic religions altogether. And yet nowhere does it say that he did that. In fact, he went to follow Prophet Muhammad, who had also a controversial domestic life that Orientalist writers had been writing about for decades, I don't say decades, but for centuries. You know, the Orientalist writers, in order to stop the spread of Islam into Europe, they wrote very ugly narrative histories about the prophet, calling him a voluptuary and saying that Aisha was his child bride, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is who we are led to believe Malcolm was going to go and follow him because he represented true Islam. So it doesn't make sense when we understand the facts. So there is no documentation that we can provide that Malcolm abandoned the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because he no longer believed in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He abandoned the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for other reasons.
Yo, that was a beautiful. All your responses are beautiful. I mean, it's like what people want to believe, but then there's the facts, right? And for those who say that you want to know about Malcolm X, and you need to get this book, and you can order our brother's book at researchminister.com. And we have two more questions, and we'll close out. So, Brother Demetric, what advice would you give to young and old who desire to learn the truth about the history between the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X? Like, what advice would you give them that they can use it as a guide to navigate all the trash in order to get to the truth?
Well, of course, order my book as for starters. You know, look, the Nation of Islam has a track record. Our track record is worthy that even if you haven't studied, our track record is worthy that you would give us the benefit of the doubt. Look at how many people in just the past few weeks with coronavirus, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, people begin to cry out, just like it says in the Holy Quran. In the 25th surah, titled Al-Furqan, the criterion, the same title of the minister's message. There's a verse or ayat wherein it states, "Oh, would that we had taken away with the messenger." And I relate that to how many people were saying, "Oh my God, where is Farrakhan?" Some were saying that from the perspective of wanting to make mischief, but as evidenced by the fact that on Sunday morning, we were present when a report was given to the minister that 1.8 million people
1.8 million
viewed his message on Saturday, July 4th, 2020. So that means that people who are asking, where is Farrakhan, was asking because they sincerely wanted to know, what does the minister think about all that is going on? So the minister in the nation has earned the benefit of the doubt. But you have to, I would say also, Minister Willie, we have to begin to really value reading and learning again. I love, YouTube and these platforms, but too many people rely on being able to watch a video clip to learn what they want to know about certain things. When we were growing up in school, the teacher would roll in the TV and the VCR player on the cart. But it was after we had read the textbook. So the video presentation wasn't primary, it was supplemental. It was considered enrichment. It was considered reinforcement. It wasn't to replace the textbook. So the youth have to begin to investigate sources. Don't just rely on what you hear me say. Don't just rely on what you hear anybody say. Go and fact check them. I was so pleasantly surprised to see a young couple who did a commentary about the minister's message on Saturdays. A young brother and his girlfriend, I think they're from Atlanta, just two little young brothers, a young brother and sister, but they were sincere and they wasn't a part of the nation. They just sincerely gave their thoughtful review of the minister's message. And it was very powerful as they were talking about what they took from his message, and you could tell this was a young couple that studies, they read, but they weren't talking over anybody's head. They were just like, look, the minister said this, he said that, and I really appreciated this, I appreciated that, I learned this, I learned that, So the youth, we have to, once again, become those who want to know the truth enough to be able to read about it. Because if not, then that old trite saying that we've all heard will continue to ring true. And that saying is this: if you want to hide something from a black man or a black woman, just put it in a book.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And last question as we get ready to close out. What would you say about someone who says they're all interested in Malcolm X and interested in what happened to him, and they consider themselves to be scholars about the life of Malcolm X? But then when somebody says, have you read this book by one of the scholars of the Nation of Islam on Malcolm X? And they say, I don't want to read that.
Well, that is a person that is not really interested in truth. See, I wrote the book, and once I publish it, see, it'd be one thing to say he didn't want to come to a meeting where the Nation of Islam was going to be discussing Malcolm X. I could understand that. Maybe he thinks that it's just going to be biased. It's just going to be one-sided. It's just going to be, you know, nothing objective or fair to Brother Malcolm. But when a man or woman publishes a book, that's very significant, because it means that they are willing to put their thinking and their mind and their reasoning and their rationale and the conclusions that they have drawn before the scrutiny of the general public. It means that they don't have anything to hide. It means that they want to be looked at on the basis of their findings, you see. So for a person to say they don't want to hear me lecture about it, okay, I can understand that. But to say that you don't want to hear what I publish, or you don't want to read what I publish, that's very suspect to me, because I presented sources. My mind goes to a YouTube clip I watched where a Jewish journalist was talking about the book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And he was telling his audience, you know, I read that book. It's actually 3, about to be 4. But he actually said he read it. And he told his audience, you know, it was painful. He said, but they documented it to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. He said they left a trail for you to follow them.
I watched that today.
I think about what this man is saying. He's Jewish. He said, I read the book. It was painful to me, but I can't argue because they left a trail for me to follow them. And it's so meticulously documented that even though it's painful, I can't say it's not true. So for people to say that they don't want to research
this book,
that means they're not really interested in the truth.
And Brother Demetirc, how many sources are in it? You said how many?
We have 400 sources.
400. And you have excerpts where you from your personal interview with Malcolm X's secretary, who you have a quote on the back of the book, right?
Yes.
You have documentation. You have stuff from the FBI files. You have words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So 400, you know, so when people talking about, when I come across people on social media and they're talking about Malcolm, and I say, yo, here's the book. And now we got this interview that we're going to actually send them as well. So listen, for those, I know somebody asked a question about why Spike Lee didn't mention the minister in the book. We don't want to go into all of the book, because then we'll get into now the YouTube video, this video will be your source. No, go and get the book. Go and get the book, right? And brother, in the interview just now, I'm just like, look what he said. He said that actually in the courtroom, when Malcolm X was asked about the domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he didn't say teenage secretaries, he said his wives. And in the book, there's other information that our brother has regarding that. And look at the bottom. Myth busting propaganda against the Nation of Islam. So this is scholarship. You see it. So go and check it out. And so for those who are watching, who have been watching, what we want you to do, can you leave in the comment section right now, what did you learn? What were some specific things in this interview that stood out to you? What did you actually learn? Please take a moment to type that. Everybody that's on it, we got up to like 130. If you're there, take a moment. What did you learn? Are there any other questions that you have that we can send the brother? Some people may not want to ask the question because your name is going to show. But what did you learn? What did you learn? Please type that. That's very important. I'm big on feedback. And while we're going to give you time to type that, and Brother Demetirc, we're going to come back and let you close out. But I just want to go through these announcements, and we'll come back and let you have the final words. For those who are on here, as we say, follow us on YouTube at Mos46AV and on Instagram at Mos_46. That's here in New Orleans. This is our playlist that we're putting together, and it's constantly growing. Where it has clips from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. You can see it's 3 minutes, the longest one. But we have the lectures that he did at the Apollo Theater. So when people start saying stuff about on social media, if you don't have all of the details to be able to bring it to them, go to our page and send them this playlist so they can argue with these facts. We also have stuff as it relates to this anti-Semite charge that they throw on the minister, which is a lie. When they say he called the Jews a termite, we have clips where you can hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's explanation and the exact words that they are saying that he said actually on this playlist. So you don't have to go all over the internet to find it. We have it. The minister explains his positions towards the Jewish community, on the Holocaust. The minister talks about how he did not call Judaism a gutter religion. He talks about his visit where Jewish rabbis came to his house. He talks about the relationship and the sound and solid research of the books, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, volume 1 and 2. And as our brother said, we have a part 4 that inshallah will be coming out. If you have anybody that we need to pray for, hit us up, inbox me. We'll submit it to our mosque prayer team, send it to us. And then in addition to that, we're trying to pay off our mosques, brothers and sisters. We would appreciate if you can give something. Cash App right now, whatever you can give, we appreciate it. We're going to highlight and acknowledge all of our contributors. You can also go on our website as well. And on next, inshallah, on next Sunday, as a part of our I Have a Testimony, and we're going to get Brother Demetirc to come on as well soon as well, inshallah. We have Brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad this Sunday at 2 p.m. You can go and see Brother Rizza's, the one that we did on last Sunday. So that's with that, brothers and sisters. So Brother Demetirc, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you the question about? Brother Richard, I'm reading this comment because it's not going to show on Facebook. He said, Nation of Islam deals with facts only, no emojis, no emotion. So, Brother Demetirc, any closing words, anything you wanted to say that you didn't have the opportunity to cover because I didn't ask you the questions?
No, I think we covered a lot of territory, Minister Willie, and I pray that those that have watched it and will watch it will be edified by the content of this conversation, and that they will be motivated to get a copy of the book, and that they will read it. And then they're welcome to write to us and share with us their feedback, because we really want to be impactful. And we can't know what impact we've had unless we receive feedback from those that have read it. So my encouragement is to those who have watched it to study, to get the book, especially share it with young people. This book was written with the youth in mind. And of course, it's a great book for any age. But I know that among young Black men and women whom I work with on a daily basis, many of them have looked upon Minister Farrakhan and the nation with a jaundiced eye, simply because they have been force-fed a diet of lies with respect to the assassination of Malcolm X.
And
so
lastly,
I'm very appreciative of you giving us this opportunity and sharing your platform with us tonight. And again, go to researchminister.com, get the book, and let us know your thoughts.
And it's not available in ebook form, huh?
Not currently.
Not currently. It's not available. So leave your comments, brothers and sisters. Leave your comments. We appreciate everybody watching, but we want to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Brother Demetric. Go get you some more tea, my brother. And may Allah continue to bless you. And inshallah, we will talk.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
We thank everybody that tuned in, all of you all. Share this video, and those who watch it afterwards, make sure you leave your comments about what you learned. Peace.